And we're live. Hey everyone, thanks for joining today for the info session with the Firehose project. I'm Brita, I'm a student advisor here at the Firehose project, and this is Marco, one of our co-founders and CEO. We're here to talk to you today. The topic of the day is front-end versus back-end development, what each one entails, what are the differences, and what we teach here at the Firehose project. So we're really excited. I know a lot of people, that are getting into coding and looking into transitioning careers or starting projects have questions about this. So we're really excited to be chatting with you about it today. So before we start, just kind of an overview. So we'll be talking about this topic of the day, front-end versus back-end development. And then we'll jump in and kind of talk about coding in general and why it might be something that you'd be interested in exploring, and kind of what the future of that looks like and what it's like as a career. And then if that's something that you do, that you are interested in, how you can get involved in that and the different ways to learn, and then how we teach coding as well. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to enter them in the chat. We'll be answering those as we have the info session. And you can also send questions to questions@thefirehoseproject.com. And we'll be sure to get back to you with more information and to chat further.
Yeah, I'm actually going to jump into the chat in a little bit and answer everyone's questions as well. So
yeah,
I'll be there too.
Yeah, so you can chat with Marco if you have any questions. Cool. So why don't we dive right in then?
Sounds
so front end versus back end development. So I guess let's start with front end development. What does that entail? Kind of what can you do with front end development skills?
I think before we dive into specifically front end, let's first give like a little analogy for everyone to understand like what front end and back end, what the difference is there. And I think a good analogy is, I think Ken mentioned that once before too, in one of his blog posts, is like a brick and mortar shop, right? Let's think about your average supermarket. We've all gone to a supermarket, and what we see when we go into a supermarket is like the cash registers, the shelves, where we walk through, where we browse for goods, there's the fruit section, there's the meat section, and that's what we consider the front end, right? Everything you can see, you can touch, you can interact with, and you use to do anything, like your experience that you have while you're walking through a Safeway or Whole Foods, any type of supermarket. Now, the back end is what you don't necessarily see as a consumer, as a user, as somebody visiting a site, a web application. And in a supermarket analogy, that would be the warehouse, right? That's where all the boxes get delivered to, they get unpacked. It's like a bit of chaos. Maybe there's organization in there, but you don't really see that. That's where the staff is going into, but you never go in there. There's a big sign, do not enter unless you work here, right? So that's kind of like front end is what you see. Back end is what you don't see. It's like behind the scenes, but it's equally important, because if you wouldn't have a back end, and once the shelves are empty, you wouldn't know how to restock them. So your supermarket will be out of goods really fast. So back end, front end, equally important, I say a lot of times.
Cool. Yeah, good analogy.
just trying to level the playing field so everyone has like good analogy in their mind. Should we dive into like front end, what front end does?
Yeah, let's start there.
Okay, cool. So front end, I think if we go technical terms, right? If we're thinking about what does a front end developer do? It's like anything that a site visitor, a user touches. So we're thinking like, that's like you oftentimes work with a designer. So if we're looking how we're doing things here with our front-end developers, it's like we have a designer comes up with a visual design that they do in Illustrator, Photoshop, or Figma, any of those tools, and it looks beautiful. And then it's not code. It's just like different colors, different shapes of rectangles and squares. And then that needs to be changed into code so it actually lives on the website. And what we're doing there is like we need to write code in HTML and CSS. CSS is like the style sheets to make everything look beautiful, the organize things on the page, and the HTML code is what every browser is going to read. That's what front-end developers do a lot. And then they also started this is like for several years already, started doing a lot of JavaScript. So when we're thinking about the user experience, the UX, that's what that involves. It's like the JavaScript to make things move on the page. So if you're thinking about a good example of JavaScript is, for example, if you're in Gmail and you're in your inbox and you chat in GChat around, and you see somebody typing, and you see the little bubbles that somebody's typing right now. That's like a good analogy of JavaScript. Anything when you drag and drop something over the page, that's JavaScript. And a lot of times that is what front-end developers do as well. Is like these things that make the user experience better. Dragging something, not a long page refresh, that kind of stuff. So I think that is like, in a nutshell, what a front-end developer does.
Cool, yeah. So let's talk about back-end development now. I think that's probably a little bit more abstract for people that are just thinking about getting into coding. So maybe we can dive into that and kind of break down some of the key things that a back-end developer would work on and stuff like that.
Cool. So where do we start? I think like, on a nutshell, like a back-end developer, I always like to say they make a web application smart. They make the web application do what it's meant to be doing, versus a front-end person makes sure that you can actually look at something, you understand what you're supposed to be doing. So, but before we talk about like, what does it mean, like what it's smart and logic and algorithms and all that stuff, I think it makes sense to explain what a web application actually is. Shall I dive into that?
Definitely.
Okay, cool. So web applications have multiple pieces in them, right? And one of them is a database, right? So if we just have a website, that is something that doesn't have a database necessarily attached to it. So then we're looking at, it's like if you're thinking about, if you're coding with us already, we have built a portfolio page, that is a website. If we're building a web application, that's something that I can interact with, right? Where I can enter something through a form in a database, and then the actual stuff that I'm seeing on the site will change. So one of our applications that we're building, and maybe Brita shows you that later, is our Splurdy app, which is our quote generator. And that actually asks people to add a quote to the database, right? And so I can go in as a visitor to this page and I can add something, and it saves it in my database, and then I can see it again on the homepage, and I see something that I contributed to this application is now on there. If you're thinking about Airbnb, right? If you have a house or a room that you want to rent, you go on there, you create an account, that's stored in the database, all your information, and then you want to create, like, you want to choose dates, you want to upload pictures, all of that goes in the database too. And so if you're thinking about a database, just like going even more abstract, is like, think about, we all used Excel, right? So that's one way of looking at it. So think about it like an Excel sheet with multiple tabs and multiple Excel sheets, and they all link together. Each column and row contains certain information, be it like, could be a table for users, right? Everyone's email address, and everyone's user ID, so we can find our users. That'd be one table in our database. If we're thinking about any applications usually has hundreds and hundreds of tables, if not thousands of tables, and that's something that you need to be good at as a backend developer, is understanding how to organize a database, how to connect the different tables of the database, and how to go into the database, pull out the information, show it to the user. You don't necessarily care about how you show it, because that's what the front-end developer can help you with. But then like also take some information, manipulate it, and store it back and save it again. So again, Airbnb example would be, oh, you want to adjust your dates, right? Because you made a mistake. So you go in, adjust the dates, no longer available this week, but next week. That's also going to get pulled out of the database first, adjusted, and then pushed back into the database. So that's one of the things that we need to understand. I can also dive in a little deeper and explain how actually a web application works.
Definitely.
Okay. So one concept that comes up a lot when we're thinking about web application is a concept called model view controller. And that is something that we're doing as developers across the spectrum. So don't just think like web application frameworks like Ruby or Rails or Angular or Node.js. Like this MVC model view controller is something that all modern web applications do right now. And it's splitting pieces apart into different segments. So, and that makes it easier for us to develop complex applications faster. So we're teaching that in the program with our Ruby on Rails track completely, how to actually do that. The MVC architecture is something that our students learn in the first week. But what is MVC architecture? And a good example is how does a web application actually work? How does it work when you go to a page and you type in a URL and you hit enter? What happens behind the scenes in an MVC, in a model view controller architecture? So a good example is to think about a rock concert. So Brita, what's your favorite rock artist? What's your favorite artist?
Is this a leading question?
This is not a leading question.
Do you want me to say Justin Bieber?
I told her I'm going to talk about Justin Bieber today, but you can mention anyone.
I'll stick with Justin Bieber.
Okay, we'll stick with Justin Bieber. Okay, so if we both were to go to a Justin Bieber concert and think about what happens in the background as a web application, I'm trying to make references to that. But if we're going to a concert of Justin Bieber, the first thing we would do is we need to find where that is, right? Let's type it in the URL. So we're going to drive to an address, we're going to get out of our car, and there's usually like that's kind of like the same as typing in the URL and hitting enter. But we don't really see anything. As behind the scenes, right? And then we have three different kind of people working together. One is called the controller, right? So think about that as the stage manager. He's basically organizing everything behind the scenes. So what do we need? Well, we need to have it's called the model, right? And this is the person who goes into the database. So remember what the database was from what I explained before. That's where everything's stored. Any big like drawers and storing places. The warehouse pulls out all the instruments and carries it up on the stage, right? Rita and I are still standing in front of the closed curtain waiting for that, for the curtain to open and Justin Bieber to start singing. At that point, the big burly guy model drops all the instruments onto the stage and it's chaos. And the controller, our stage manager, says, okay, hold on, yeah, that's great. We got everything here. We got the guitars, we got the drums, we got the keyboard. Now we need to organize that. And he goes to another guy, is the view, who organizes everything, makes it look pretty. So we use everything and it's in a good, the concert can go. So the view comes in and organizes everything, puts the microphone up, puts the drums where they need to be, the keyboard where they need to be, maybe plugs everything into. And the stage manager says, okay, Justin Bieber, stand right here. You're ready on 3, 2, 1, go. Press the button, the curtain opens. At that point, we see the web application, but we see Justin Bieber and he starts singing, and that's when the magic happens, exactly. And so that is like the analogy. If you think about model view controller, splitting everything up. One person is organizing everything, that's your controller. The model is like dealing with the database and pulling everything out of the database and just throwing it out there. And the view is the person that makes everything organized and pulls it together, right? So the view is using your CSS, your styles. That's what front-end developers do a lot. The model and the database, that's what back-end developers deal a lot. And they also deal with the controller because that's where the logic oftentimes goes to like making sure, okay, what do we need to get from where? And so if we're thinking about web applications today, we're always thinking about MVC, model view controller architecture. And the analogy of a rock concert is like pretty close to what happens behind the scenes when we're typing in the URL, justinbieber.com. I don't know if that URL exists, and we hit enter. So that's back-end development to a lot of parts, is like figuring all these like things out that are happening in that MVC architecture.
Cool. So I know kind of talking about taking like the model to the view and all the logic, like how, talking about large amounts of data and databases and stuff like that, like how do you, can you talk a little bit about like the logic and what we use to work through that data and stuff like that?
Cool. That's a super good question. So when we're thinking about like databases and making sense of that, right? We're talking about logic, we're talking about probably going really fast to like algorithms as well. So one of the things as a backend developer is like, as I said before, is like, how do we manipulate data in our database? How do we pull it out? How do we organize it? And that's where like the logic comes in. It's like, what do I want the experience to be if a user requests something from me, from the web application, right? Be it like somebody is going to delete a picture, like think about the Airbnb example again. My image should be deleted of my apartment because I want to upload a new one. I want to edit this. So first I'm going to delete it. So now I need to figure out, okay, what's the best way of deleting the picture from the database? Do I need to keep a backup? Do I not keep a backup, right? Do I give that option to the user and then they want to upload a new one? And how does that work? Where does it get stored? New place, different way. That's the type of logic that I need to write. And that's just one small example. If you're thinking about something more complex, you're thinking about money transactions, things going over, whereas like, okay, I need to store credit card information, probably need to be secure. I need to figure out who receives what type of money. If I'm Airbnb, I'm going to take a cut, so I need to have those calculations there. That's all logic that we're writing. And at the end of the day, if you're thinking about you handling 1 million of those per second, something really big, then you want to also think about optimization. So it's like, how can I make those requests to my database fast or in a way that the web application still loads within milliseconds for every user, even though I have 1 million people trying to do something at the same time. So that's backend as well. It's like thinking through that, thinking about the logic of how things happen behind the scenes. With the analogy that we had before is like, if you think about the warehouse, you're thinking about the Safeway, and the warehouse is complete chaos. It will eventually take so long to get things out of the warehouse onto the shelves. The shelves are always empty, and that's not a good situation for any person who wants to buy something because they physically cannot. So then at one point it makes sense to optimize the warehouse that we're actually getting better in there and getting faster in there. And that's what you do as a backend developer as well once you start working on really big web applications.
Yeah, cool. So we talked a bit about front-end development and about back-end, and we're just like, I think this a little bit starts to get into how the two are interconnected with the logic and the algorithms. So that's a great segue into what we teach here at the Firehose project. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and how you can, how those are kind of merged as a developer?
So there's like front-end developers on one side, there's back-end developers on the other side, and then there's what we call full-stack developers, and that's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
And so that is like basically somebody who can do both stacks. They can do the front-end and they can do the back-end, right? So it's kind of like you're more universal because you can do both sides. And that's what we're teaching here is like, we're teaching you the back-end, but we're also going to teach the front-end, right? So you're able to do, if you have, for example, if you have an idea, you can do everything. You can do the whole database, you can do all the logic, you can do all the algorithms, everything that makes the application smart, and then you can make it look good so the user and the user experience is good and it looks good for somebody coming to it. So these two pieces coming together is the trend that we're seeing right now. Is like everyone wants to know both sides, right? There's specializations, definitely, but being a backend developer only a front-end developer comes with challenges. Because a lot of people know both sides. And if you're thinking about the average team of like, maybe 10, 15 developers for a certain project, either within a bigger organization or in a small company where it's maybe only 10, 15, 20 developers, and we're thinking about it like a lot of those are full stack developers or they're backend developers. And then usually like on a team of 10, 12, there's usually 1, max 2 front-end developers. So if you're thinking about where to go, I would always put my money on full stack development because that gives you, especially if you're switching careers. And then within that, I would dive a bit deeper into backend development because that's where the majority of that's where the heavy lifting happens, right? It's in the warehouse. The supermarket, how it looks like, we have it. We just need to figure out how to get our wares into our products into our shelves best. Maybe that's not the best analogy anymore with the supermarket, but that sounds so boring, like organizing things into shelves. That was one of my jobs in high school. But it's like figuring out like how to be valuable for a company, for a team. And if you know both sides, the front end and the back end, you have a much better chance. There's more job opportunities there.
And not only that, but once you land one of those jobs, you're able to work much better as a collaborative team member, knowing what the other kind of side of that equation needs and how they work and how they look at things. So I think that's a huge benefit as well as having like a full stack knowledge base.
Yeah, and we see that on our team here, all of our developers at Firehose, right? They're all full stack developers. So they sometimes do the back end, they do build something out that makes our platform smarter, and then they also might build something out that makes it look better, right? So they switch between the two. And there's obviously some people are better on the front end and the back end, but eventually everyone can do both sides.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I think that was a great kind of 20-minute-ish explanation.
Talk too long?
No, it's great. I think that was super helpful. Some good Justin Bieber analogies always help. So thank you so much for joining.
Sure.
Definitely, if you have any questions about front-end versus back-end or full-stack development, or what we're teaching here at the Firehose project, which we're going to get into soon, but feel free to send those into the chat, and Marco will actually be hopping in there and answering any questions. And you can also always, at any time, email us at questions@thefirehoseproject.com, and we'll get back to you.
Cool.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks
so much.
Marco.
Bye, everyone. I'll be in the chat.
Awesome. So jumping into kind of the rest of the info session and looking at coding and careers in development and just what the industry is doing right now. So I think to start off, why is coding important and relevant? And I think some of those analogies that Marco just gave and that we just talked about will probably shed some light. So most of you probably know Airbnb, and you use a whole bunch of web apps in day-to-day life, whether it's using Yelp or Craigslist or anything that is an interactive website. Those are all created by developers. And so obviously those are everywhere. There are constantly new companies coming out that are having online web apps. And if you look at just the past 5 years, 10 years, the progression of those technologies and innovations has been huge. And so thinking forward to the next 5, 10 years, that's only going to continue. And we're seeing more and more that's also involving coding and programming. So looking at things, that Tesla is doing and SpaceX, autonomous cars, Google, obviously, a ton of developers there. All of these industries are taking off. And so not only are we seeing innovation with online web apps, but we're seeing new industries that are using coding and programming. And then we're also seeing more traditional industries and traditional companies that are looking to automate things and to be smarter and faster. A lot of what Marco was talking about, to really organize and streamline things and make things more efficient. So even companies that you may not think of off the bat as, having coders and, starting a coding career in those types of industries are starting to catch up and realize that they need to automate and become more efficient as well. So in short, it's a really prevalent in-demand skill set and industry that is, going to continue growing. And so there really are the jobs and the opportunities of the future. And I think there are just going to be more and more possibilities of the different kind of niches that you can get into with a skill set in programming. So that's kind of looking at the landscape of what you can do with this type of career or skill set. But taking a look also at from a personal level, what's it like to work on this? So obviously, if it's something that you're going to be investing in, you want to make sure that it's going to be a fulfilling career. A lot of programmers do find, a challenging and fulfilling career out of coding. Because it has a lot of, you're always working on something new, and it is actually a very creative role. So you are constantly outputting things and creating things that literally weren't there before and that are helping society or helping make things more efficient. And so I think, people that really enjoy logic and problem solving and puzzles and also have a creative background really enjoy coding. I think there's probably a bit of a misconception that people who go into coding and programming are, we're really good at math in high school and have science backgrounds or have a CS background. And that's not necessarily the case. I think we actually spoke about this the other week, and we have a blog post about it as well, kind of traits of great programmers. And a lot of them actually tend to be more kind of problem solving and critical thinking and creativity based than pure math. So I think people that enjoy that type of thing find a really fulfilling career out of coding. And I think, it's incredible seeing the things that our students have done, both in the program and once they've graduated, with their new skill set and with all of the possibilities that they're able to create amazing things with code. So if you have any questions or want to see some examples of that, definitely shoot me an email at questions@thefirehoseproject.com, and I'll send you some examples. You can check them all out and see what our students are making. So if this is something that sounds interesting to you, there are a lot of ways to start this off and transition into a career of coding at any point in your life. So obviously, you can go the CS degree route, which takes about 4 years and, is kind of a bit more of a time and financial investment. But a lot of students now and a lot of programmers are going to coding boot camps and having a really intensive hands-on experience. So the Firehose project is obviously an online coding boot camp. So we can talk a little bit about why we have an online coding boot camp, what the benefits of that are, and kind of what you can expect out of that online experience. And so before diving into that, kind of backing up a bit and looking at how the Firehose project started. So we actually did start by teaching in-person intensive courses. So Marco, who is just here, and Ken, our two co-founders, have a background in programming and education, and decided that they're going to start teaching coding because they've been having all these people ask them to help build out their websites, and turns out people really enjoyed learning how to build out their own websites. So we started teaching in person, and we taught at a bunch of universities like Harvard, Babson, Brown, RISD, Carnegie Mellon, all over. And what that helped us do is it gave us a really quick feedback loop on how students learn best. So we started understanding where students are getting caught up and how we can best explain things. And then how, what content we can provide at the right time to make things really clear and really click for students. So we took all of that feedback that we got really quickly from in-person teaching, and when we decided to scale out the program and be able to teach more students all over the country and the world, we turned that into an online course. And we were able to take kind of all of those lessons that we had from in-person teaching and put that into an online program that teaches students how to become a full stack web developer in either 22 or 42 weeks. And so you can start to check that out if you haven't already in our free bootcamp prep course. So you can sign up on our website and you'll start coding in some HTML and CSS. So that's some of the front end stuff that Marco was talking about. And then you'll also start right off the bat writing some Ruby programs. And you can get a sense for our teaching style and kind of hopefully be able to sense how we were able to translate some of that in-person lessons that we learned from teaching into an online course. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. I know most of you have already been coding with us in the free bootcamp prep course. So some of the benefits of learning online is that you get a much more kind of personalized and individual experience. So if you think about like an old school or like a traditional learning experience, you've got one instructor, maybe an instructor and a TA, and a classroom full of students. And you're very much kind of held at the pace of that classroom. And so that means if you're doing really well and you're progressing quickly, you're going to be kind of held at the pace of the classroom. You're not going to really be able to go ahead. And that can kind of squash your progress and squash your momentum. And vice versa, if you are not quite grasping concepts, you're falling behind, you need a little extra help, it can be a little bit harder to do that. It can be harder to, raise your hand in class and get the help that you need when one instructor is trying to help everyone and teach to everybody. So with online learning, you get a much more individualized experience. As you're progressing through our platform, you're checking off lessons, you're meeting regularly with your mentor and having office hours with us and getting regular code reviews. We're able to work with you a lot more at your learning pace, the help that you need, and also making sure that you're progressing along. If you're doing really well, we're never going to hold you back at a certain pace or level. So I think that's one of the huge benefits, is that you can move at your own pace and really get a more individualized experience. Another benefit kind of related to that is that we're able to really provide the right content at the right time for you. So as you're going through the lessons and checking off lessons as complete, which I'll show you later in our platform, kind of how we do that, and you're going through and you're working on challenges, we can say, okay, now is a good time to watch this video overview, which is going to explain a whole bunch of these concepts and really help tie things together as you're continuing through these lessons. So go over here and check out these videos, and then come back and continue working on this challenge. So our platform is much smarter in that it can provide the right content at the right time based on exactly where you are in the program versus, following an instructor's kind of lesson plan and their pace as well. Thinking more logistically, an online coding program, and ours in particular, that allows you to really kind of log in and code on your own time, allows for a variety of scheduling and time zones. So we have students in our course that have full-time jobs, part-time jobs. We have students that are devoting 40+ hours a week to coding. Students that work on weekends, nights, mornings, you name it. So it allows for a lot of different schedules, and what that means is that we have a really diverse community of Firehose students all over the United States, all over the world, in various time zones, and that really brings a whole rich variety of backgrounds both perspectives and, previous careers, and just background experience into our platform. So as part of the Firehose community, because we're online and are able to have this really awesome network of students all over the place, you also get to really connect with a diverse community. And then you also get the opportunity to get matched with an experienced mentor. During the Firehose program, you'll have a whole bunch of different kind of support networks and mentorship as well. So starting off with the mentors, every student in the Firehose program will get matched one-on-one with a mentor who has years of coding experience. And so we work really closely with all of our Firehose mentors to make sure that they're both awesome programmers and awesome at teaching and working with new coders. So in your first week of the Firehose project, we'll ask you a couple questions about your background and your goals, and we'll personally match you with a mentor that's going to bring the most to the table based on that. And so you'll meet with your mentor regularly, and this is something that really helps take your coding to the next level. So they're going to work with you on challenges and things that may have been kind of tripping you up the previous week. And it's a really great opportunity to pair program as well, which is something that in your first dev role, or really in any dev role, is something that you'll work on with your team leads and with other members of your team. So you'll get the opportunity to pair program with a senior developer as you're just starting out, which is an incredible experience and really helps propel your learning. A huge benefit of both working with a senior developer and also having an online course where you can tap into these networks of talent and of senior developers all over, versus being limited to kind of your geographic area and that network. So kind of going into further support, as we built out an online course, we wanted to really make sure that we built out a course where students are getting the help they need and never feel like they're stuck or isolated or learning alone. And so this is a huge goal of ours in building out the program. And so one way that we do that is through the forum at the bottom of each lesson. And that's something that in the free bootcamp prep course, you'll have access to. You'll see it at the bottom of every single lesson, and you can ask your questions there. It's a great medium for asking questions because you can either take screenshots of your code or copy and paste your code in there, and we can take a look at what might be tripping you up or what you might need help with. And one of our Firehose engineers or ambassadors will get back to you quickly with some technical help. And so that's designed to really make sure that you're never stuck spinning your wheels. And so, sometimes it's just as you're starting off and you're coding up a storm, and it can be the simplest thing, like having an extra comma in your code or a typo or something like that, and it's really frustrating to spend hours looking through that code and trying to figure out what went wrong. So the forum's there for that type of thing, as well as larger questions. If you're not sure how something's working, we're always there to help you out and point you towards resources that will help you out so that you can really start to be more of a self-sufficient developer, but also never be stuck while you're coding online. We make sure we always get really quick response times and helpful answers to you there. So another thing that we have that you can take advantage of is we have weekly office hours with Marco and Ken, who host office hours, and it's a time where basically you can call in and ask your questions and hear other students' questions as well. And just be able to really put faces to names of other students that are in the program. And so it's a great kind of networking opportunity and community building opportunity as well. Just chat about your experience, get any questions cleared up, and connect with our Firehose team as well as other students, which you'll be seeing throughout the program. Of community channels and a Slack channel as well for Firehose students. So there's always a lot of chatter going on there, students sharing their projects and ideas and questions and funny or frustrating things that have happened in the program, and just sharing ideas and kind of generally connecting there. So throughout all those methods with the forum and the office hours, mentorship, and the community channels and Slack channel, we really build this online community where you can tap into and meet other students and hear their experiences, hear their questions, maybe answer some of their questions, and vice versa. And so that's a huge part of our kind of online community, and that's what honestly is one of the greatest things about our program, and that our students always really feel from the get-go is how kind of tight-knit and awesome that community is. You'll kind of further that when you work on your team project as well. So you'll work really closely with a couple, usually like 3 to 4 other Firehose students, as well as a team lead. And so we'll get more into what that team project entails. But that's going to be another opportunity where you're meeting with Firehose students and working with them really closely as a team. So diving into the kind of the curriculum and the program and what we teach there. So we start off, as I mentioned, with the bootcamp prep course. And so that's basically like a free preview for our program, and it kind of teaches you some of the basic skills. So you'll, as I mentioned, you'll work on HTML, CSS, and you'll start writing Ruby programs. And you'll sit there. We'll have a few different coding challenges that you'll submit, and the Firehose engineers will review your code and give you feedback and let you know how it could be more efficient or how it could be improved. Or if it's awesome, you'll get the thumbs up. And then once you complete all those challenges, we're also able to accept you into our full program. So it acts a bit as our application process as well, while kind of simultaneously giving you a preview of the course and meeting some of our team and really getting a feel for what the full program is like. So you'll get code reviews there. You'll be able to ask your questions in the forum, and that's how you get accepted into the full program. So moving into the full program, we do have 2 options for timing. So it's going to be the same curriculum, same projects, but you can choose to either do an accelerated pace course, which is 22 weeks of coding, and that's about 25 to 35 hours per week. And again, you can put in those hours when it makes sense for your schedule. And then we have a 42-week pace course. And so that's going to be closer to 12 to 15 hours per week. So it's going to be obviously, stretched out over more time, a little less time each week. So we have those 2 options available so that you can kind of see what works best for your schedule and other obligations and things that you've got going on. Both of those course paces, like I mentioned, have the same curriculum. It's the same program. And so we focus a lot, kind of as Marco was mentioning, with the front end and the back end development concepts. So he was mentioning, working with data structures and algorithms and logic and MVC architecture. And so we focus a lot on these computer science fundamentals. In addition to that, we have a heavy focus on test-driven development. So writing really good tests into your code, which is definitely a best practice, if not like a must-have for developers. And what that does is it really sets you up with a strong foundation of programming and computer science fundamentals so that you have this, you're gaining all the technical skills, but then you have this launch pad to really just accelerate your career and continue learning in your first jobs and as you continue your career as a developer. So we focus on all of these computer science fundamentals and giving you that strong foundation. And as we're doing that, you're working on several projects throughout our program. And so we teach Ruby on Rails and JavaScript. And so you'll be working in both of those languages. You'll create apps in both of those languages. And throughout the program, you'll be building out 5 full applications. And so you'll have a ton of experience, and you're taking those all the way from the beginning of kind of a conceptual and a planning, wireframing phase through development, and then learning how to, deploy your code and host it online and go live with that. So you're going through that process several times. And the way that we teach that is we start off by kind of walking you through some of these steps. So we're going to be showing you how to do all of these things, and you're going to be working through the lessons and coding and learning all of these kind of steps of development. And as you're doing that, you're going to have the support of your mentor, of the Firehose team, office hours, all of that. And so we're walking you through how to build out these apps. And then what we're doing is we're giving you some coding challenges to work on as well. And so we're kind of asking you to put that into practice and then, take all of the lessons that you've learned and really apply those. And so as we're doing this and we're going throughout the program, what we're doing is we're kind of slowly removing the training wheels and having you become more self-sufficient and independent as you're coding. And so shortly I'll show you what the platform looks like. So we'll get a preview of the full program. And we'll show you these different aspects where you've got challenges and you've got the lessons that you're working through as you're building out apps and all of that. To really show you kind of how we teach and how we bring you through that learning process. huge part of our program is definitely like hands-on, learn by doing. You're building out programs, and all of our lessons are designed to be completely kind of simulating that real world environment. So we're taking all the things that you would do as a developer on a dev team and turning those, giving you that experience in our lessons. And a huge part of that is the Agile Team Project. And this is what really helps our students get jobs. So you'll work on a more complex app with a team. And so you're going to be not only working through the logic and the algorithms and building out that app, which is a chess game. So coding in, how all the pieces move differently, and writing tests to make sure that each move is a legal move, and writing tests to verify checkmate and stuff like that. But you're also going to, one of the best kind of most important skills that you're also getting out of that is working with a team and coordinating that workflow. And that's what really shows hiring managers that you're going to be an effective employee from day one, is that if they hired you and dropped you into their team, you'd hit the ground running because you would know how to work on an agile team where things are constantly changing and you're working towards a larger objective as a team. So with that being said, let's take a look at our platform and look through kind of what the lessons look like, how we set up the support in the platform, and all the different types of things that we've got going on in there. So I will pull that up and we can take a look. And just one moment. Great, so this is our platform here. And so you'll notice if you've started the bootcamp prep course that this is, very similar designs. You're going to have these different cards that are going to be the different kind of lesson tracks that you're working on. So in the full program, this is the bootcamp prep course here. So we're working on, HTML, CSS, and Ruby. And then we've got it split out by the different kind of topics and applications that you're going to be working on. So earlier, Marco mentioned a quotes generator. So you've got this database-powered quotes generator that you're building out in the first week of the program. And so you're going to be working, right away with data structures and, Ruby on Rails, and then also designing out the front end as well. And then so some of the other things that you'll be working on are Yelp clone. So this is using location-based APIs. So you're going to use a Google Maps API. You're using algorithms. You've got things like, user login and authentication, ratings, image uploading. So, a lot of the things also that Marco was talking about with the Airbnb example, like image uploading, deleting images, stuff like that, you're going to be learning here. And so we've got a whole bunch of applications that you'll build out. I'm not going to go through them all here because you can actually see them if you're in the free bootcamp prep course and you go to preview full program. You can take a look at all of these things and the things that we'll be learning. So I'll jump right in. So let's dive into this lesson here, building a Yelp clone. And we're going to take a look at some of those. And sorry, I was jumping ahead, but before we jump into that, let's take a look also here. So these are some of the things that we have built in right on your dashboard that are going to show you kind of how you're progressing. So this is my kind of, I haven't gotten too far, but I've completed some of the lessons. So you'll see a progress bar here, which is how far you're going through the lesson. And so here you'll see for each track how completed it is, and you'll be able to check off your lessons over here. So we'll give you weekly goals, and you'll see it's really a mix. So some of them are you've got some videos that you need to watch, and you can also see a preview of kind of upcoming goals as well. So you'll be able to check these off, and these are things that are built in to really hold yourself accountable and make sure that you're staying on track in the program. So let's take a look now. We'll go into some of the lessons. So this is building out that Yelp clone that we were just taking a look at. And so this is this is a random lesson within it, but this lesson is changing the rating from a text box to a drop-down. So we're building out all of these features within the app. In this one, we want to have a drop-down menu where a user can pick a rating. And so you can see we have a kind of text-based curriculum. The reason why we do this is because as a developer, you're going to be getting text-based kind of instruction and documentation. And so anytime you're working with a new API or with a new project, you're going to get you're going to get something text-based. You're not going to get a video or someone necessarily sitting down to walk you through all of it. And as I mentioned, we want to give you all of that real-world experience. So this is to get you started, to get you used to working with that type of documentation. And so you'll see throughout we've got, common gotchas, stuff like that. And then down here at the bottom, we have the forum where you can ask questions. You can see a bunch of people put back to them all there. And so we'll always help you out there. And then when you're ready, you can mark that lesson complete and keep going. So this is what, a typical lesson might look like. And then, as I mentioned, we also have these challenges. So the challenges are really kind of wheels and asking you to apply what you've been doing in all the lessons. A self-guided lesson, I give you a little pep talk to start off, and then you'll dive right into it. And so these challenges are a great thing to practice as well, because as you're programming, it's going to be more what it's actually like if you're working with a client and working with a project. You're going to get kind of rough details, and you're going to have to put the pieces together and figure out what you need to do. So these are what some of the challenges look like. We'll give you little hints that you can check out if you need it. I'm not going to hover over them too long because I don't want to give anything away. And so you'll work through these challenges and then submit that. That's what kind of is tying together everything that you've just learned before you move on. So we showed you a simple lesson or a basic lesson and then a challenge there. And so some of the other things that we have, as you probably saw in some of the goals, are we do have video lessons. And these are for some of the kind of larger topics to make sure that you are, that we're tying together some of the things that need probably a little bit more explanation. So we're able to direct you to these videos when it makes sense for you based on your progress through the course. And you'll be able to watch these videos that are going to walk you through some bigger concepts and really help kind of piece everything together. And so we do have definitely a kind of combination of curriculum format throughout here. Forum on every lesson, like we mentioned. So taking a look at a couple other things, so we also do have job prep built into our program. And so this is something that you'll get access to later on in the course. And you can also see, I won't dive too much into this because you can also take a look through these in the preview the full program section of the free bootcamp prep course. But basically we built out a really extensive job preparation resource. I think there's over 50 lessons in job preparation, and we started building this out with the help of, or with the feedback of hiring managers and technical recruiters, and really, finding out from them, from the source, like what they're looking for and what helps you become a competitive candidate. And we start all the way at the beginning of, organize and structure your job search in an effective way. As well as like what to expect and optimizing your application. So working on your resume and cover letter and stuff like that. And we'll give you a little sneak peek here. So we totally break down a technical interview. So you'll see here we've got really detailed lessons that are talking about how to really nail these interviews and stuff like that. So we're giving you interview best practices. We're giving you things like how to have salary negotiations, how to optimize your application, so working through your resume, interview mistakes, writing a cover letter, all of that. So we walk you through that whole process because the technical job applications and career process can be quite different than a sales role or a business role or something like that. And so lastly, what we have up here are advanced lessons. This is a relatively new feature. We've had a bunch of students coding with us in the advanced programming course, and we've gotten really awesome feedback. And so this is, if you will, our Firehose graduate program. So these are designed for after you've graduated, or as you're nearing graduation and you're looking for jobs, or even at your first job. We have several students that are at their first jobs after graduating and going through these lessons. And it's meant to help you continue learning more advanced topics and things like JavaScript frameworks and SQL. And And so, the best developers never stop learning. And so we've developed this platform. We're constantly adding new topics and curriculum where you can always keep coding and learning and really stay sharp and stay competitive in your role. So that is a preview of our platform. As I mentioned, if you have questions or if you want to check out some of the apps that students have built in our program, definitely email me at questions@thefirehoseproject.com. And I'd love to share some examples. You can take a look at things that students have built both in the program and once they've graduated. And always love to share that with you. So zooming back out and kind of taking a look at the Firehose program as a whole and what we do and why we're different. So I think, one of the first things is looking at the curriculum and at our program and the depth of the curriculum. So we have a really strong focus on computer science fundamentals. So it's test-driven development, algorithms, and logic, MVC architecture, all that type of stuff that we were talking about earlier, and giving you that full stack education. And so although we're teaching 2 languages in our course, we give you that launch pad to go off and learn additional languages and additional technologies. And so we've had students that have graduated and become Java developers, iOS developers, and that's because they have this really strong concept of all of these fundamentals that are transferable across various languages and technologies. So we go really deep on that while giving you that hands-on real-world coding experience of building out these apps and working on an agile team. And so that agile team project is another thing that really sets us apart and helps our students get jobs, because all the best products are built by teams, and so you're getting that ability and that experience as you're learning of really working on a team, and then having that to be able to speak to in a job interview and talk with your hiring manager about that, and about how their team works, and tying that in as you're continuing your career as well. And then our coordinated support kind of across the board. So we have really high quality mentors. We work very closely with all of them. And that's something that really bumps our students up to the next level each week as they're, meeting with their mentors and getting the opportunity to pair program and tap into their industry experience and expertise. And then we have, our office hours, our forum support, our community forum, and just our whole Firehose community, both students, alumni, mentors, and the team here. We're kind of all here for each other, all rooting for each other. And that's a really strong, powerful community, and that's what definitely, I think, sets us apart. Any of our current students will be the first ones to say that. So I think those are some of the kind of main, things that we're really proud of and that we really strive for here at the Firehose Project. I'd love to hear any other questions. Hopefully you've all been submitting any in the chat, and Marco's been helping out with that. If you have any others, feel free to send them, once again, questions@thefirehoseproject.com, and we'll get back to you. You can always set up a phone call if you want to chat one-on-one and ask any questions, or happy to chat via email. And if you haven't already, make sure you sign up for the free bootcamp prep course. Start coding right away. You'll be able to submit your code and get coding feedback from our engineers, what you can improve, and get a taste for our platform. So thank you guys so much for joining. It was awesome chatting today. Hope we were able to answer a bunch of your questions. If not, send them in, and we'd love to chat with you further. Have a great day, everyone.